All right, welcome to my backyard, everyone. Today we're going to be doing a video on how to breed fish in these IBC containers like you can see that I have here. So I set these containers up at the start of summer and I've wanted to do this ever since I was a little kid. And basically what the idea is that we set up bodies of water out in your backyard or wherever you've got space over the summer period when it's hot enough that we don't need like heaters or anything like that. And we basically just set them up and let Mother Nature do her thing. This is the first time I've done this and it's actually worked out great. So I've tried out a bunch of different species. We've had a lot of breeding, things that I didn't really expect to breed. And I'm gonna be doing a video very soon on tearing down these ponds as it comes into winter. So we're getting into the last few days of summer here in Australia where I'm from. And I'm specifically in Brisbane in southeast Queensland. So we can probably keep fish outside from about October, November, all the way through till about April when it starts getting really cold overnight. So next month I'm going to be pulling these ponds down and seeing what happened. But I'm going to teach you guys how I set these up and just kind of run you through because I've made a lot of videos and people have had questions. So I'll just give you an overview. What these are called IBC containers. I think they're referred to intermittent bulk containers. And basically what they're used for is chemical storage or whatever. But they're great because besides them looking ugly, they're actually really good for fish. Normally these come with like a top on them. People normally cut the top off. I actually bought these for $65 each from a guy who cuts the top off and runs this nice black stuff around the sides. I added this mesh on top, hoping that it would keep dragonflies out of the ponds. Unfortunately, this mesh is not fine enough to keep dragonflies out of the ponds, but I do think it helped with keeping birds out of the ponds as far as I'm concerned. I did find a couple of goldfish that maybe a couple of the kookaburras got, but other than that, the mesh seemed to help a little bit. I don't know if I'm going to be bothered trying to keep pests out of these ponds in the future. I think I'm just going to maybe let nature do its thing if I set up any more. As for the setup, none of these have substrate. I added a few buckets with gravel in them just because I wanted to grow some plants. The reason I didn't add substrate is because these tanks all have this tap on the bottom. And I thought if I added gravel, it'd be hard to use the tap at the end of the season when I want to drain these ponds. So the idea is going to be just get like a net underneath the pond, open it up, and then let all the water come out and just catch whatever fish kind of come out. And we did that with the pond with the goldfish in it, and it worked out great. So they're very, very easy to use. They're great because they're just cheap. They're $65 and you got one set up, and yeah, they work out great. So I've got like plants and stuff growing in a lot of these now, but I didn't necessarily need it. I think one thing that did save my butt is that I've added a sponge filter to every one of these ponds. So I think that's a big important part. It means I can probably keep more fish, and I think it got me off the hook when it was getting a little bit hotter in the hotter days during summer. I think they only keep about 400 litres of water, but when we say only 400, that's a lot of water. And yeah, I've got 6 of these set up. So the way mine are set up is I've got an automatic water change in my fish room that produces a lot of wastewater, and I thought better than wasting that water, I could use it to fill up the ponds. So that water goes into a sump, which has a float valve. So the float valve hits the top of the bin, turns on the pump, and the pump pumps all the water into here. Now, each of these containers gets filled up with old water, but it doesn't really bother me because the water's going out into a pond. So it gets a second life, and it actually helps to grow a lot of the plants. It helps me with my green water pond, and yeah, it works great. My girlfriend doesn't really like these ponds too much, just because of how ugly they are. I mean, I'll admit they are pretty ugly, but she puts up with them, and they make me happy, so I appreciate her for putting up with them. But next summer, I think what we're gonna do is when I tear these all down, I wanna put down some nice gravel and make them look a bit nicer, try and figure out a way to make them look not so hideous in the backyard here. So I think I could do a lot of things different in future setups, just like aesthetics wise. But for practicality, I think they all work really, really well. Now, what I'm gonna do is talk through some of the species that I've chosen to use for breeding in my ponds. We'll go to this first pond here. This one has some Tenellus blue eyes, which I added. I have not seen any fry in here, but I know I added them, and I have seen the adults still down the bottom. I've also got a ton of hornwort in here, but the interesting thing that I added in this first tub was L397 plecos, and they actually bred. So I added a bunch of driftwood, and that's another thing that's good about ponds, is you can soak and prep driftwood in those ponds. So I added a bunch of driftwood in here, hoping that the catfish would clean it up and soak, while it soaked down, they could eat it. And we got breeding. So I opened up one of the breeding tubes and I found eggs and raised those up, and they're now in the fish room. So I'm sure there's going to be a heap of babies in here when I pull it apart. I'll be pretty surprised if I don't find any. So no breeding from the Tenellus, but we got 397s breeding, so I'm happy. In this next pond, I added my adult colony of leopard frogs. I haven't seen any leopard frog pleco babies yet. They might be breeding, but I did also add some peppermint bristlenose in here, and I've found babies from them. So the peppermint bristlenose have been breeding out here. I've also added my Kempomba blue snake endlers in here. There's heaps and heaps of babies in there. There's thousands of cherry shrimp in here, and I mean, I'll never ever have to like buy guppies in summer again if I wanted to set up like a guppy breeding facility outside, because they just went nuts. So there's hundreds and hundreds of endler babies in here and thousands of shrimp. In this next one, we have rice fish. I got these from Glenn, and that's I think just what's in here. There's hundreds of rice fish. I've sold some in the store, and yeah, there's heaps of plants, like lots of foxtail and all that. In this next one, I've got black Moscow guppies, and I've also got my turtle snap in here. I use this pond for my green water, and the way it works is you can see there's no plants in here. Basically, this is just a big green water culture, so all the fish poop creates that nice green algae, which I culture and use to make Daphnia, and I also feed it to my fish too, because it's really good for your fry. So this has worked out really well. This pond's probably the most useful one out here. Over in the other two, I have 24 karat gold guppies. They've bred like crazy. There's also honey blue eyes in there. They didn't actually breed as well as I thought they would. I'm sure now that the guppies are in there, they're eating down the babies. But before that, I had them in there for a couple of months and there was hardly any breeding going on. I also found a crayfish in there, which has climbed out from the pond next to it, which had the goldfish. Don't know how it got in there. And there's also a ton of red cherry shrimp in there. So what would I recommend to breed out in ponds? Probably definitely live bearers. I think the live bearers do really well outside. The rice fish did really, really well too, which wasn't a surprise. But like there's lots to be done. So I've seen people do paradise fish. I've seen people do gouramis. I've never really seen people do like peppermints and stuff, but I'm definitely gonna be doing that next season. And like the goldfish did really well as well. So as for species, I mean, you've kind of got your pick, as long as you can be willing to lose those fish, I guess. That's one factor, but I just threw whatever I had kind of around at the start of summer in these ponds and it worked out beautifully. As for the plants I used in these, I used a lot of this foxtail, so this hornwort. That grew really well, but to be honest, I feel like a lot of stuff's gonna grow great. Also, these Amazon swords grew really well. They've actually grown immersed now, as you can see, and they look beautiful. The red lotuses did really well and they were flowering throughout summer, which was nice to see. And yeah, I feel like I've really just kind of scratched the surface with this. So how to breed them, throw them in, set it up like a normal tank, leave it outside and see what happens is basically what it is. But I kind of just wanted to talk about them and walk you through the system. I think you guys too are probably wondering how much time this actually took me, this project. So to set it all up, I mean, was pretty straightforward. It wouldn't have taken me more than a couple of days. And then maintenance wise, these are probably the easiest things to take care of. I genuinely, I think on average, I probably would have fed them 3 times a week and I was just feeding them bug buffet and green cuisine. And yeah, they did phenomenally on it. So because they are outside, I think a lot of just natural critters fall in here. I think another thing that was cool is I added some frogs and I did get some tadpoles growing out here. So we're getting nice frog calls and stuff at night. And the ponds attract a lot of wildlife too. So you do have dragonflies coming past and you do have butterflies and birds around, and they're actually really, really nice. The other thing that these tops were really good for, one of the problems with my area is we do have cane toads as a natural pest. And if you get a cane toad in a pond, it can just kill it because what they do is release their toxin and it'll just completely nuke your pond. So I didn't run into that issue, thankfully, over the summer. And with some expensive fish out here, it was just definitely not worth the risk, which is why these tops did come in useful. Like I said, they didn't stop the dragonfly larvae and they didn't stop water beetles getting in these ponds. But to be honest, I don't think it was any issue. Maybe I lost a few fry here and there from dragonfly, but did I really want those fry to survive? Probably not. The beautiful thing about ponds is nature really does do its thing and you do get natural selection. So you're gonna get really healthy, tough fish that you can sell to fish stores and stuff like that when you breed them out in the ponds because of that natural selection factor. So anything that's just not weatherproof, not rainproof, not heatproof, not coldproof, is going to pass in these ponds, and the best fish are going to spread their genes. So like those black Moscow guppies have got to be some of the nicest and best quality that I've ever seen, because the turtle culls them. So Snap does a great job. She culls them all out for me. And yeah, but these ponds per week didn't even take me more than 3 minutes. They're just really, really fun. So I just threw a bit of food in there when I thought of it, and basically just let everyone do their thing. And water change wise, I never had to top them up because of the system that I set up. So because of the fact that they auto top up, I never have to worry about filling these up, and they're really just hands off, and I just come down and enjoy them in the afternoon. And I think they're amazing. So if you guys have the chance to set up something like this, I would strongly recommend it. It's a very easy project. I'm sure you guys are going to be creative with your own ways of setting up your ponds and all that, but this way's worked great for me, using the wastewater from the room. Haven't run into any issues, and the fish have done fantastic out here. So thank you so much for watching the video, and me and Sammy will see you in the next one.